So on page 75, adjustable rate mortgages. Here we go. So the SAFE Act defines a non-traditional mortgage loan as any loan that's not a 30-year fixed rate loan, conventional loan. Per the definition, a loan product with an adjustable rate feature is a non-traditional loan. Adjustable rate mortgages are typically conforming as lenders follow the secondary market. So originally, when adjustable rate mortgages were out, they were being done by savings and loans, and they did not follow Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, so they were not conforming. They did not conform to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's types of loans. But later on, as the banks learned that, hey, if we conform, if our adjustable rate mortgages conform to guidelines by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, then we can sell those loans on the market. Then we can make new loans to people in our community. So then they started conforming to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, and then adjustable rate mortgages were sold to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they had standard ways, they standardized them. So instead of being the way that the banks wanted to do them, they had to do it the standard of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And to be standard like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac want to, you had to have these components of an ARM. So at the bottom of page 75, there's several components to an ARM. The first one is the index. Next to the word index, write down changes all the time. I want you to know that the index constantly changes. Underneath the margin, I want you to write down that the margin never ever changes. The margin will be the same all the time. Once your borrower picks a margin, it will stay the same for the life of the loan. The fully indexed rate is write down the index plus the margin. Index plus margin is your fully indexed rate. The rate adjustment period is how often the rate will change. So rate adjustment period, put changes in rate. It can change a maximum of 2% per year, so it's usually annually. And while people are writing, I'm waiting. Because I know if they're writing, you're probably writing at home. Going on. The start rate. The start rate is sometimes called the teaser rate because sometimes the start rate is much lower than the fully indexed rate. We're going to do examples and we're going to highlight some more stuff, so don't freak out on me until the very end, okay? Rate cap. The caps are there to write in protect borrower so that it doesn't exceed. So just next to rate cap, put protect borrower.
What did you say put next to start rate?
Start rate's also called the teaser rate. It's when the rate is way lower than the fully indexed rate. And the last one on the page is called a conversion option. And a conversion option loan is a loan that has the option to convert it to a fixed rate loan. So it's an adjustable rate mortgage, just like any other adjustable rate mortgage, and it has a margin and an index, and it adjusts normally. But after the first year and before the fifth year, so you might want to write that there, after first year, before fifth year, it gives the borrower an option to roll it into a fixed rate loan. Now they're not going to get the going rate, because I would say it's a free rollover, but it's not. It costs 1 point, but they're not going to pay for escrow. They're not going to pay for title. They're not going to have document fees. They're not going to have an appraisal. So because they're not having all those fees, it's usually a 1% cost to convert it, but they're not going to get the going interest rate. They're going to be about a quarter higher. Okay. And after you write all that down, go to the next page.
So you said after first and...
After first, before fifth. 1% cost, about a quarter higher. And going on. So now we're going to see where I made you guys all write it so that you would remember it, and now we're going to highlight it. So on page 76, it says, the basic formula for calculating the interest rate on an ARM is highlight the index plus the margin. You wrote that down. The index plus the margin is the fully indexed rate. The interest rate that the loan will adjust to. The timing and frequency of the rate adjustment is known as highlight the rate adjustment period. It provides a certain level of control to the interest rate adjustments. Further control of interest rate increases is known as highlight the interest rate caps. Drop down to index. The starting point for the adjustable rate, the adjustment of the arm, is the index. Indexes are common ways of highlight measuring the cost of money. Cost of money. As a result, it often is referred to as the cost of money. Since the index is the only component of the arm, highlight index, only component that fluctuates. It's the only part of the adjustable rate mortgage that goes up and down due to the market forces. So a good margin, when we get to the margin, is usually about 2.5, because you take the margin plus the index and you don't know what the index is going to be. The index should be one that is determined and affected by the market conditions and regularly listed, highlight on the Wall Street Journal. You're also going to find what the indexes are on your rate sheets. The margin. The other component lenders use to disclose to the borrower is the margin. This is referred to as highlight the spread, which represents the lender's highlight profit margin over the cost of money. The margin is a fixed number expressed in percentage points and is predetermined by the lender. Okay, it says in the book predetermined by the lender, but let me tell you something, your borrower is the one that gets to pick what the margin's going to be. Margins vary from lender to lender and usually range from 2 to 3.5%. The margin is not subject to change for the duration of the loan. After the initial fixed period of the ARM expires, the calculation of the increase is made by adding the index to the margin. The index plus the margin equals highlight the fully indexed rate. So then they have an index. They have an example, 3.25 plus 2 on the margin is 5.25. This is where I highly suggest that if you're not good with fractions, you start learning to be good with fractions. If you have a problem with fractions, I have an adjustable rate sample, and underneath it I have a fraction chart. If you want it, just text me fraction and I will send it to you, okay? It's super easy. It goes 0.125 equals an eighth, okay? 0.25 equals a quarter, and so on and so forth. And the reason I have it is because when I went to go work at the first mortgage company, the guy hired me, and then after he hired me, he looked at me kind of funny and he said, "You do know how to add and subtract fractions, don't you?" And I think I must have lost all the blood in my body and turned all white, like really white, because he looked at me funny and said, "I'll get you a chart, don't worry about it." The good news is obviously in the real world, you'll be using a calculator and you can add fractions on your calculator, but really you should know them so that when you're looking at a rate sheet, you know what you're looking at, okay? Going on. So know your fractions. It says, we did the fully indexed rate there on page 76. It says, when underwriting the mortgage loan on an adjustable rate mortgage, highlight the fully indexed rate may be used by the underwriter rather than the start rate to highlight, qualify the borrower. You have to go to the worst case scenario. What's the highest the payment's going to be, and make sure that the buyer is not going to have payment shock, okay? Rate adjustment period. The rate adjustment period is highlight the length of time between and frequency of interest rate changes. So you're highlighting the bold print. This period is generally fixed to provide a level of security for the borrower. The period may be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, yearly, any period offered by the lender and accepted by the borrower. So the rate adjustment usually is 2% per year on the normal loan to be standard. Teaser rates. When the initial rate of the ARM is also known as the start rate, highlight start rate, is less than, highlight less than fully indexed rate, it's considered a discounted index rate, sometimes referred to, highlight as a teaser. And go over to interest rate cap on the next page. Interest rate caps are used with ARMs to limit the number of percentage points an interest rate can increase. See where it says increase? I put a line and I put or decrease. Adjustable rate mortgage do not always go up. Sometimes they do go down, okay? And I'll show you examples as soon as we get to a point where I can stop and do an example. So interest rate caps are used with ARMs to limit the number of percentage points an interest rate can increase or decrease during the term of the loan, helping to eliminate large fluctuations in the mortgage payment. Rate caps are often shown in two numbers. So when you're looking at adjustable rate mortgage, you're going to see two numbers. A 2/6 means the most the rate can change during a given time is 2%, with the 6 number in the back is the life cap. Now that doesn't mean that the highest the rate can go is 6%. It means that if your start rate is 2, then the highest it can go is 8. Okay, so the 6% life cap is from the start rate. The first number in the front, highlight 2, highlight indicates the rate cap. Drop down to the next one, highlight the second number, highlight is the life cap. Some ARMs allow for a larger rate change on the highlight first adjustment and then apply the periodic cap to the future adjustments. These ARMs are really horrible and you don't want to sell them. Oh, it doesn't say that there, I'm sorry. It says these ARMs are usually identified with 3 numbers rather than 2 numbers. The first number is in front is the highest it can change on the first change. So you can see that the very first time it can change to 5%. That's pretty bad. And then the second time it changes can only be a maximum of 2% with the 6% life cap. And then it says, how does an ARM work? Skip that and grab a piece of paper. If you don't have a piece of paper, just go to the back of your book and write in the back of your book. You're gonna need a pen. I'm gonna need a pen. Oh, you know what I might have? I used to have this thing, it was really cool. It was like a whiteboard. And of course I don't have a whiteboard now. So I use a piece of paper. All right, so sorry that I don't have a whiteboard. I asked for one like 100 times, but I never get it. All right, let me find a piece of paper. Ew. There has to be a piece of paper down here somewhere. I got one. I'm coming up. All right, so it goes like this. All right, so we're gonna do it together. We're doing an adjustable rate mortgage sample. So we're doing a 2/6, so put 2 and 6 on your piece of paper. 2 means it's only gonna change 2% per year with a 6% life cap. And then write start rate. Our start rate is gonna be 1.375, which is 3/8, if you don't know. So we're starting at 1.375. Our caps are 2 and 6. And let's see, what else do I have to tell you about? Our caps are 2 and 6. Oh, our margin. So write down the word margin. Your margin on this loan is gonna be at 2.5%. Okay, are y'all with me? Should look like this. So that means you had a 2 and a 6, so it's 2% per year with a 6% life cap. I said that the start rate is 1.375, and your margin on the loan is 2.5. What's the highest it can go on the first change?
3.375.
Thank you very much. 3.375. So worst case scenario, it can go to 3.375. What's the highest it could go to on the life of the loan?
8.
No. If I start at 1.375 and my 6% life cap, the highest this loan could go is 7.375, right? 6 plus 1.375. Everybody with me? The type of question you will get is, after the first year, the index, so write it down, index is, let's call the first year, the index is, let's say 3.25. So the first thing you're gonna do is they're gonna ask you, what is the interest rate gonna be? You do your margin plus your index. So your index is at 3.25. You're gonna add your margin, which is 2.5. So 3.25 plus 2.5 is 5 3/4, correct? Yeah. Tell me if I'm wrong, because sometimes I am. 5 3/4. We started at 1.375. Are we going to 5 3/4? We did margin plus index. Are we going there? No. The answer is no, thank you. We're going to 1.375 plus 2 is 3.375. And that's what our rate is going to be for the whole next year. Are we good? It's not that bad, is it? A year goes by. Don't you love how fast a year goes? Oh my God, I'm going to be 61. A year goes by. Okay, so what?
I didn't really understand that part.
Okay, I'll do it again. Your start rate is 1.375. Your margin is 2.5. After a year goes by, the highest you're going to go is margin plus index. If margin plus index is higher than your 2% cap per year, you're going to stop at the 2% cap. The 2% is to protect you from going any higher. So we added the margin to the index and we got 5 3/4. So we did not go to 5 3/4 because we have the 2% cap. So 1.375 plus 2% is 3.375. So we're going to be there for a whole year. Don't worry, I'm going to keep going. A light bulb will eventually go off, I promise.
I thought you said the margin was 2.5.
I did.
Okay.
And then I added the margin to the index, 2.5 plus 3.25. The index will be whatever it is at the end of the year. But on a test question, they're going to say at the end of the first year, the margin is, the index is this. And you have to add the margin to the index. Always add the margin to the index. So a year goes by. In the question, the index changed from 3 1/4. Now the index went down. So second year, index is at 1 1/4. So 1 1/4 plus your margin of 2.5 is 3 3/4. You're at 3.375. You're now going to be at 3.75 for the next whole year. There's a difference between 3.375 and 3 3/4. It's like a half, right? A little more than that, same as that, 3/8. So that's why you have to know your fractions. Are you guys with me? Going on. Next piece of paper. Stay with me, don't go anywhere. We're going to do the same kind of loan, but I'm going to teach you about a hybrid loan. Okay? And this is important because it's a test question that you may get. A hybrid adjustable rate mortgage, and go to your book and go in where it says hybrid at page 178. See where it says hybrid? A hybrid arm is an arm with an initial fixed rate period greater than 1 year. The loan has a fixed rate for a specific number of years. For example, a 3/1 arm has an introductory low rate for 3 years. A 5/1, 7/1, or 10 years has that fixed period for 5, 7, or 10 years. You cannot advertise it as a fixed rate loan, because it's not a fixed rate loan. It's an adjustable rate loan with a fixed period in the beginning of the loan. Okay, that's called a hybrid. The hybrid is an amazing loan for somebody who maybe says, you know what, we want to buy something, but it's just my husband and myself. We're planning on having kids in the future, but we just want to get a condo or a townhouse. And then in 3 or 4 years, we're going to sell that one and take the equity from it and buy a house. So they're not intending on being landlords. They don't want to keep it. So if they're not going to keep it, you can say, well, instead of getting a 30-year fixed rate loan at, let's say the rates are 3.5, I can get you a hybrid loan that's fixed for 5 years at 2.5. So it's going to be way lower. Pardon me?
What page is it on?
It's on page 78, where it says example of hybrid arm. But I'm explaining it to you. So I'm not reading out of the book, because that would just be way too boring. Okay? So I'm going to show you an example. Bless you. I'm going to show you an example of a hybrid loan. So here we go. Take your piece of paper. And this loan, this is the question, okay? It's a question on a test. You have a loan that's fixed for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, it rolls into an adjustable that's 2 and 6. That means it can change a maximum of 2% per year with a 6% life cap. But for the first 5 years, you're going to be sitting there at 2 and an eighth. Okay? So for 5 years, you're at 2 and an eighth. Nothing is going to happen. Are you with me? After 5 years, it goes to margin plus index. The question says, after the third year, what's the interest rate?
Same, 28.
Thank you very much. 2 and an eighth. It's not doing anything for 5 years. So at the end of the third year, it's still at 2 and an eighth. Okay. There's another hybrid loan question that says this. John and Kathy Smith are getting a hybrid loan. The interest rate is at 2.75 for the first 3 years. Then after the first 3 years, the index goes to this, and then the margin goes to this, and the question goes on and on and on. And it tells you that their payment is $720 for the first year. Remember, they told you they got a hybrid loan that's for 3 years. And at the end of the question, it says their payment is $720 for the first year. Okay, if it's a hybrid loan with a 3-year hybrid period, the payment's going to be $720 for the first 3 years, right? So after it gives you all the scenarios, it gives you the margin and the index, it makes you think you're going to have to calculate all this crazy stuff out. It says, what's their payment at the end of the second year? $720, because it's going to be like that for 5 years. You guys don't overthink the questions. If you don't understand the question, go back and fully read it. If you don't understand it at that point, mark it down and go on to the next. Skip the ones you don't understand and keep going, okay? Did I tell you guys how to do the T thing? No. All right, so this is what I want to do now that you have a piece of paper that's somewhat blank. I have time, I have 5 minutes. Okay, so make a capital T. And on one side of the capital T, put a baby X. And on the other side of the capital T, put 2 X's. It looks like this. See this, you guys? I'll show you guys in a second. So it's a T. See the T? 1 X and 2 X's. You got that? Not very hard. A capital T, on one side you put 1 X, on the other side you put 2. You guys, when I first saw this, I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. It is the best thing you can do when you're taking any test, whether it's your mortgage test, your real estate test, or I had one girl tell me that she learned this. She came up to me at the end of class when I said I thought it was stupid. She goes, I did that in college and it got me through college. So basically what happens is as you're taking the test, there's 2 things I want to tell you right now. So we'll take a break from the book. This is not in the book, okay? This is Sharon's way of taking a test. There's 2 things I'm going to tell you about. One of them I'm going to put on the T. We're going to talk about the T. It's also already on my YouTube page, but there's something else I'm going to tell you. I have to shut off my video because I don't want to put it on the internet. And it's not because I don't want to share it with my YouTube people. It's because I don't want other people like the NMLS or the regulators to know that I'm telling you how to take the test, because it's something that I figured out and it works. So if you're watching me on YouTube and you want to know what it is, just call me. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the T. You're taking the test. You're sitting there and you're taking the test and you get to the first question, you know the answer, take it. Do not go ever back to it again. If you know the answer, answer the question and go on. Then you get to the next question and the next question. You're answering them and you know them and you're like, this is cool. Then you get to number 7 and you look at number 7, you're like, God, Sharon told me that one. I know it. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't know it, but I know it. Put that one on the side with 1 X because you kind of know it, but you don't know it right this second. Okay? Then you keep going and you get to number 12. And number 12, you're like, Sharon never said this ever. I don't even know why it's on the test because it didn't come out of Sharon's mouth. It was not in my book. I don't know what the hell it is. Put number 12 on the side with the double X's. So as you're going through the test, you're answering the ones you know. This means you're never going back to them. The only reason you would go back to that question is if you saw, because sometimes you'll see a question that clarifies one of the other questions. Okay? If you see a question that clarifies it, then you can go back and check one that you thought you knew and maybe you didn't know it, okay? But other than that, never change answers, because the problem people have with taking tests is they second guess themselves and they change correct answers to wrong answers. So don't do that, okay? Because you guys, you don't want to miss by 1 point. Because a lot of people, when they miss by 1 point, they get frustrated and they don't go back and take the test. Okay? So when you're all done with all the ones you knew, go back to the ones with the 1X and answer those. Because now you might have jogged your memory by doing other questions, and now you know the ones on the 1X. You should only have probably anywhere from like 12 to 15 questions on the 1X side. On the 2X side, same thing. You're only going to have somewhere between 12 and 15 questions on the 2X side. You're going to go through all the ones on the 1X, and then you're going to go through the ones on the 2X. Now, if you have like 50 questions on the 2X side, you need to go home and study. That was a joke, you guys. Okay. If you don't know certain questions on that side, the best thing I can tell you to do, which works on most tests, is look at the longest answer. The longest answer in test taking is always the right answer. Now, if you have two answers that are really long, look at the longest answer and then look at the answer that's pretty long next to it and see which one you like better. If you don't know out of those two and one of them is C, take C, because C is the most popular answer on every single test. I know it sounds super stupid, but I've literally had people take this test and go, if you didn't tell me that longest answer or C, I would have never passed the test because I didn't know what I was going to do at the end. So C and the longest answer are the most popular answers. A is the least popular answer. And what I'm teaching you guys right now is the psychology of taking a test. And I can't do this in the 20-hour class, so it's really hard for me when I'm looking at the answers in the 20-hour class. I'm like, God, I just want to tell them that. Because A is the least popular answer. Now, the reason A is the least popular answer on any national or state test is because think about these regulators. They're sitting there figuring out questions for you, and we're going to take dinner in a second. They're figuring out questions for you, and then they have to come up with these really great answers that sound like the right answer, but they're totally the wrong answer. So they have to make up these answers. So they're making up the question, and then if they give you A as the right answer, they just did all that work making up B, C, and D for nothing, because you're not going to even read them if you know that A is the right answer. So that's how come the T thing works really well. So it is now 7:01. You have a 10-minute break. Come back at 7:11 and we'll get started again. And then remind me, I'm going to tell you this thing that I did and I teach people to do that nobody in the test taking world wants you to know. Okay? See you in 10 minutes.